Hi, friends! Welcome to the Infertility Club podcast. Today, I am so excited about our very special guest, Haley Banks Boren. Hi, Haley!
Hi. Of
Thank you so much for being here.
course. I'm excited.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited. I was thinking back and I was realizing we've known each other for quite a long time.
Yeah, I know.
It's been so fun to see your journey and how you become a mother and an awesome entrepreneur. And that's been so fun. And I actually reached out to your sister and Scarlett. And I said, Scarlett, what's a few of your favorite things about Haley? And I was dying with what she said. And I have to read it because I feel like it's just so fitting and so perfect. And she said, Haley always has a smile on her face and squinty eyes when she smiles from smiling so big. She has the most contagious laugh and will laugh all day long about everything. Those who meet her instantly want to know her because she is a positive light. She is an amazing and smart business owner, and those who work for her absolutely adore her. She is patient and loving and a loving mom who can laugh at the crazy things that happen with having two toddlers.
That's sweet.
I thought that was so cute. And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, really is so fitting. You do all of those things. And
Yeah.
oh,
It's sweet.
okay, let's go ahead and dive on in. So, Haley, tell us a little bit about your journey to motherhood. What does that look like for you?
So I feel like the journey to motherhood was just really long in a sense. We struggled with infertility for about 5, 6 years. And just did all the infertility stuff and doctors and everything. And then let me think back to a year in 2020 or like 2019, we started like kind of thinking about the adoption process. And it was kind of like right when COVID was hitting. And so, yeah, so like end of 2019, beginning of 2020, we started that process and then we kind of went from there. So that was kind of like the start of everything. And then it just kind of evolved and we ended up finalizing adoptions in 2021. So, yeah, so that's kind of, yeah, so it was a process, but I mean, we ended up like, getting our two beautiful babies and that was just fun. It was just crazy, you know, like, so yeah, so it was really fun. It was just kind of a whirlwind.
So, Haley, after visiting infertility clinics and realizing that might not be the best option for you guys, and you're thinking about adoption, what were some of the first steps that you took? Or did you look into different adoption agencies? Did you reach out to people? What were some of those first steps that you took to do that process?
Yeah, I mean, I knew literally like nothing on this. I was just kind of like, okay, like I've heard different stories, I've heard different things. Like, where do you even begin? And I just started picking up the phone and calling like anyone and everyone. Like, I just sat there, like, I wrote down a list of international places, domestic. I just called everyone and like asked everyone. Also, too, like my brother at the time had this friend that was like was working with a lawyer, and so I think she was like a paralegal or something. So, anyways, um, yeah, so like I talked to them about it. I just like anything and everything. Like I just kind of like asked so many questions and was calling everyone. Anyways, one day my mom had talked to this like one of her neighbors and she's like, hey, you really need to reach out to this lawyer because some like a expecting mother had reached out to him and was looking through that like channel of finding adopted parents. And so I had called him and he was like, yeah, I don't really like match people, but you just need to get the word out to like anyone and everyone. Like you just need to tell everyone you're adopting and this is what you're trying to do. And you need to call different lawyers and adoption agencies and just like be open to anything and everything. So that's kind of what I did was I would just like, we ended up making a video and posting on social media. So we got the word out like that way.
Oh,
Which
I
like that
remember
was
that
a whole thing.
video.
Yes. And that was like a whole thing because there were certain things that like we could and couldn't say. So we had to kind of run it by the lawyer and say like, okay, like, is this approved? And so we put it out there and just basically said like, this is our story and please share and like get the word out that we're wanting to adopt. So yeah, so that's kind of what we did, but that was kind of the start of everything.
That's awesome. I remember when you guys did that video, and I remember just watching it, and it was so sweet, and it just made me so excited for your guys' adventure moving forward with hopefully getting kids. And now fast forward knowing you have kids and that how it all worked out, like that's pretty amazing.
It's crazy. Like now social media can be used for so much good. It's like
Hmm.
it has negatives, but can be used for so much good. So it was great for us. So
Oh,
yeah.
I
So
love that. So when you were working with lawyers and kind of the legal side of that, I feel like that can be intimidating. How did you guys navigate all of that?
yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like an agency is really nice to have in the sense that it kind of creates like a buffer and it also helps you get like um more exposure and your story more exposure and stuff like that. We weren't working with an agency, and it's not because we like didn't want to. It was more like a lot of agencies weren't accepting people because of COVID, and they were just like, we're kind of at a pause mode right now, and so it was kind of intimidating, and it was a lot that we had to like learn, and we had to kind of like get through just different hurdles. But I mean, a lot of lawyers are so knowledgeable that they like will just give you all the information. And so it was nice like that we had a friend that worked with the lawyer that so she would communicate to us too, like, okay, this is like what you need to be looking for, what you need to do. So that was awesome. But also like the lawyers were super helpful. And I know a lot of lawyers like you can reach out to and ask for like free consults. And you have to have a lawyer anyways to go through the adoption process. So it was nice just like getting a lawyer early on. So then we didn't hit like any roadblocks that we're like, okay, like what do we do?
Yeah,
And that's what they
totally.
do. They do that for a living, a lot of the lawyers. And so it's like they've been through so many adoptions. So they can tell you just different experiences that they've had.
Totally, totally. And they can kind of even be that little mentor who's they've been through that and seen things and so kind of help guide through that.
Yeah. And I also like, there's like consulting groups for adoption. I mean, obviously, you have to pay like an extra cost because then it's like third party. Then you have like your lawyer, you have the consulting group, and then plus you have like the agency, or if you don't use an agency. So, I mean, there is like different routes you can go, and they're super knowledgeable and like awesome to work with too. We didn't end up working with them, but I definitely had different phone calls with them just to see like their thought process.
Totally, totally. That's awesome. Oh my gosh. So you have two beautiful children. Would you walk us through how that all came about? How it was discovered with your daughter and your son and all the info in between.
Okay, so we posted the video, and this was like really just like crazy, a miracle, everything. And I think just through the whole adoption process, you have so many hurdles, but then you also see like so many miracles. And it was funny because I remember when we first posted, a lady had messaged me. I was like, buckle up. And I kind of laughed. It was like, oh, it will be easy. Like, I'm not even worried about it. And then, like, in the middle, I'm like, okay, now I know exactly what she was meaning because I think sometimes we just think, oh, whatever. But no, like, it's just like a wild ride. So, with our little girl, we had met. It was like about a week after we had posted that video. Someone had seen it on like a separate platform that someone else had shared it on, and they had reached out saying, "Hey, like I know this couple. Would you be interested in meeting them?" And we were like, of course, and different people reached out, and we were open to like literally anyone who reached out. So I'd get on the phone and like talk to anyone and everyone who would talk to me. I'd reach out to people and be like, okay, what did you do? Like, how did you go about this? Because like this is what we're wanting to do. And so anyway, so they had reached out and we had met with our birth parents. We met at a park and it was super sweet. And like they were really sweet. And her birth mom was 34 weeks pregnant and she didn't know the gender or anything, but it just wasn't like the right timing, the situation, everything. She was so sweet. And after that, like she was like, yeah, like she was very into like, just like, this is my feeling. Like, I just feel like this, and everything like went well at our meeting. And it was great. And so from there, like we just started going to like doctor's appointments after she had decided, like, you know, but with adoptions, like nothing's final until it's final. So like someone could be telling you like, this is what I want. Like, I feel so great about you guys as the adoptive parents. But like, even until the baby's born, even when they sign the documents, like then they still have days after to change their mind. So like, it's just a whole process. So like, I think you're like so excited, but then you're kind of guarded because you're like, well, what if this doesn't, work out? So yeah, so she was 34 weeks pregnant and I was like, oh my gosh. So like, obviously I'm going into like just crazy mode of like getting everything ready. And during this time, we didn't know if like everything would go final. And someone else had reached out to us and they were like, I'm looking for adoptive parents. And it was her lawyer who reached out. And so we are like, yes, of course, and I like in the middle of everything, like I went down and met with her. I met her family. Like we did that whole thing. And so we were just like, okay, like here we go. So we kind of like prepared for these two babies because they were going to be like 2 months apart. And kind of back to like Ellie's story is her birth mom, like we would go to all the doctor's appointments together. Like she, would have my phone number. Like we would kind of have an open communication about everything. And she ended up giving birth at 41 weeks. So like after that, we got a phone call and the hospital was already like prepared that we were like coming in and it was COVID. So yeah, so we went in and we got our own room and she was like, the baby was born and, um, and so anyways, at like 5 a.m. we show up and we just kind of wait there for a few hours because the birth mom's like wanting her own time, which is like totally understandable. And then basically for the first like 36 hours of her life, we would just like, they would wheel her cart in and we would like spend time with her and then they would wheel it back out. And it was like this, like, it was like so joyous, but also you just have like, you're like, you also are just like protecting yourself because you're like, this is my baby. I know that's my baby, but also it's so out of your control. Like, I feel like with adoption, it's like everything's just like out of your control. And so, yeah, so we were just like, we didn't like see them during the birth or, after she was born, like in those like next few days, basically. But yeah, so she was just wheel in, wheel out, all that stuff. We had like the most like angelic nurse that night that she was like so like she was just so amazing like with everything. Yeah. And there's always things because there's just so much emotion like on both ends. Like there's so much emotion for the birth mom and the birth dad and there's so much emotions like on our end because it's like this happy but also like sad and just like hopeful and this baby and it's like then you're worried like okay is she gonna be mine there's just like and then you feel for the birth mom like you just have so many emotions but yeah so that was basically it and the birth mom like said like after she was released there was like a time period where like our daughter had to stay in the hospital for just like a few extra hours and so the birth mom actually was like, okay, I'm going to be released and you guys can just stay. And so we did that and we kind of like just stayed. And then we got, yeah, and so then the hospital, after everything came back good, then they obviously released us. So that was kind of it. And we took her home. But again, like you have like, we have this new baby, right? And she's like in our home, and the birth mom knows we have her, but you have like zero rights to this baby because like they haven't signed papers. And so we had to wait. Like in Texas, it was 48 hours. So we had to wait till she can even sign the papers. And then after they sign the papers, they have 10 days if they decide to like go back on it. So it's just kind of, so she actually didn't sign at 48 hours. She like waited longer, which is understandable, but it's still just like a roller coaster. So that was basically like everything. And then after like a period of time, she did end up signing. And then we waited the 10 days and then we had our baby. But she's like still not ours until like it's finalized. So it was so like just amazing. Like, okay, we got like all the papers done, but it's still not final. So I think just in the back of your head, you just know like, I've got to get to the adoption day. Like I got to get there. I got to get there. But yeah. So in the meantime, we had, this other baby that we are like expecting. So like we had set up everything as twins. So, we had set up the car seats, we had set up like the cribs and everything like as boy girl twins. So everything was like ready. And so he was born and we had a 2-month-old and he was born and we got a text like from the lawyer, like you got to fly down to Arizona to get this baby. And like I had been talking with the birth mom. I had flown down a few times. She had met like my family, everything. And we got to the hospital and we met the baby, spent time with the baby, everything. And we got like his car seat ready. And that's when we had received like the next day we received a call saying like, okay, she's still like everything in the adoption plan was like this adoption was going through. But when she like after the baby was born, she decided like, okay, she was gonna take the baby home because it was COVID and like all of her family members couldn't meet him. So I was like, okay, like I get it, I totally understand. And she decided to take him home. And then we received like a phone call the next day just saying, okay, she's gonna parent. So that's kind of it. And so we're like, okay, well, like, what do we do now? And they're like, nothing. Like, you just go home. So we're like, okay, because like, you've just like planned for the last basically 6 months for like this baby, and then you saw your babies as like little twins, even though they were 2 months apart. Like you just like everything was in twos. So that was really hard just because that that's like a possibility, but you just don't think like that's going to happen, especially when you have like such a connection with the birth mom, even though it is like 100% like it's this really sensitive thing because like I feel it on the birth mom's end because it is her choice. Like it is her choice 100%, but also it doesn't mean like you don't feel the pain of like basically losing a baby that you had planned for 6 months and you had also like met and everything. So like it's this like really weird thing. And also like, yes, you don't have rights over the baby. So you just like feel this like longing, but also it's like, it's a possibility. So that was really, really hard. And it was really hard having a connection with the birth mom and talking to her and talking about all of her doctor's appointments to all of a sudden like just not talking at all. Um, and just wondering like, well, why, So we went back to Texas and we had really sweet friends who had like taken down the crib. We still had like all the baby stuff up, but like, so we came home to like kind of a bare nursery because it was still like, we were still so like obviously joyous that we had our little girl, but then we were just like heartbroken at the same time. And everything kind of felt empty. And we just like, I just remember that those few weeks after, I would just wake up in the middle of the night, just like knowing I was missing something. Like I was like, I'm missing something. Like there is another baby, or like or she's gonna change, like maybe change her mind. But I didn't know what it was, but I just knew like, no, there was like supposed to be two. Like I just like knew it. So I just wake up and be like, what is going on? Like there's just something. So I didn't clear out the room completely because I was just like, you know. And so he was born in October, and so that was happened in October. Our little girl backup was born very, very end of July. So end of July and then October. And then December, I remember having a basically like a conversation with my friend, and she's like, are you gonna do this again? And I'm like, if someone called and basically said like this baby, like there's like almost like this baby's up for adoption and there's like no other way that like you can lose this baby. Like, even though you can lose a baby in any situation with adoption, I was just like, if someone called me, like, yes, of course, like, of course. And so we'd had the conversation as I'm like decorating a Christmas tree. And then later that day, I had like ran to Michael's to get more things. And that day, I had gotten a text from the birth mom of the little boy we had lost. And that was the first time she had reached out to me. And so it was really good because she basically, like, we just made peace. Like, it was just like, she just said, this is like why I decided. And I'm like, I totally get it. Like, I totally understand. And that's like kind of what I needed just for closure. Like, for me to say, I don't have any hard feelings. I totally get it. And then for her just to tell me like her thought process during those last like few days and hours of making that decision. And I was like, I totally understand. And then, yeah, so I went back to work, kind of like not thinking about it, and just was like, I'm glad we made peace. And then I had received a phone call while at work, and it was a lady from church, and she was like, you have just been so heavily on my mind, and I wanted to tell you that my friend is fostering a little boy, and he is looking for adoptive parents. Like, would you guys like to meet him? And I'm like, well, yes, of course. But, I'm just like, okay, like there's just so
So
many
many
different.
emotions.
Okay. So, yeah. So, a few days later, like I called my husband. He's like, okay, like, what are you getting me into again? But I'm like, no, seriously. And so, yeah, like, so we ended up going over and meeting him, and it was just like so amazing. Like, he was already 14 months. So it was so different because we were kind of like reversing, like, okay, now a toddler, but he was already 14 months, and he was with like the most amazing foster parents ever. And they like, their whole family is so awesome, but he was like being taken care of them. And yeah, so we met him and we were like, yes, like 100%, like we want to adopt him, like we feel so good about it. But that adoption was just different because we're going through a private adoption with our little girl and it's not finalized yet. And then this adoption is a state adoption. So it's just a whole different process. So we're like, okay, what do we do now? So then we started that whole process of doing state adoption and like being licensed foster parents. You have to foster, at least in Texas, in most states, you have to foster for a certain amount of time before you can adopt. So we fostered for that amount of time and then we were able to adopt. And yeah, so everything was just like, I mean, nothing was smooth. I mean, it was in some areas there, it was smooth, but that was basically like how we met our little boy. And then he didn't move into our home until March. So like from December to March, we would like obviously like see him like every few days. And like it was awesome because the foster parents lived like less than 10 minutes away. So it was so fun. Like we couldn't really have him like for a lot of nights, like a lot of consecutive days or overnights just because of the laws. But we would see him a lot. And like, I was like really grateful for that time, but it kind of was like, okay, I just want my baby. So yeah, so it was awesome. Like the day that, like we went to court and then they said, okay, yes, like he can move in. And at that day, like his birth parents' rights are relinquished because he had been in the foster system for a year. So yeah, so everything just kind of lined up, and then we fostered him for 6 months, and then on the 7th month, like we ended up adopting him. So yeah, it was like his was like, I know that state adoptions can go like so many different ways, but I felt like we just had like, it was there was a lot of miracles, even though we knew like it's not final till it's final, but there was a lot of miracles where like his lawyer was like so amazing. And yeah, so there were just so many miracles, but like it was definitely like a lot of ups and downs. So yeah, so that was kind of like how we met him, and then like the babies. So that's kind of like the broad view of everything.
Wow. I mean, you just covered so much. That is a roller coaster, I'm sure, of so many emotions. And I feel like being on this high of being able to get your daughter and all of that excitement, and then the loss, and knowing that you have another baby out there. And I'm just so
Yeah.
grateful you got your cute twins. You got your
I
cute
know.
twins.
I know, right? Like, okay. I mean, they're the same age for like 3 months out of the year. So I'm like, okay, they're still, but yes, and it
They're so
definitely
cute.
like I think too a lot of times people will like just hit like all the highs, but like I remember we had this little boy and we had to become foster parents. We had to go to all the classes. We had to do everything for him to even move into our home. And then at the same time, we still had this private option going on. And there was times like when our daughter was, oh my gosh, like maybe like not even a year yet, like probably 8, 9 months old. Like we got a call from our lawyer saying, okay, the birth parents are going to fight for her back. Like all of a sudden they decided like we want her back. Even after they had signed the papers, even after like it had been 10 days. And we are like, I mean, literally like gut wrenching, like just like, what? Like, you've got to be kidding me, you know? So like, there was times where I'm just like, oh my gosh. And then too, like through like the state adoption, like if family members would have stepped in or they would have called, like we would have had to go through a whole other fight, which we are so blessed that like that didn't happen. But still, like, so basically from when we got the call from our lawyer that they were gonna fight for it, and everything in the court system was just taking so long because of COVID. And so when they called us about that, like every day after that until the adoption was finalized was just like sickening. Like just like, are we gonna lose this baby? Like, are we gonna lose this baby? And it was like just so hard. And I had to like almost like go, okay, like I need to like put that aside to be there for my babies, but also like and like have that connection and love and bond and everything. But also like in the back of my mind, just like as a mom, it like kept me up just going like, am I gonna lose my baby? You know? So yeah, and so that was about the springtime. And then her adoption wasn't finalized until August. So we had like a good amount of time where it was like, okay, like they're saying they're gonna like fight. And so even like the day of her adoption, like I just like I remember going into court just like sick. Like, are they, you know, and they're great people. Like I'm not saying they're not great people. They're awesome people. It was just like I was just sick to my stomach, like, are they gonna fight for her? Are they gonna show up and like do this whole thing? So it was, and I like can't imagine being these birth moms. Like I can't imagine the feelings that they're going through. So it's like this really sensitive thing because there's so much like through any adoption, there's so much like hurt and love, and because it's like to me it's like so selfless. Like it's like you're like giving this baby a different life, you know? So it's like the most selfless act, but it's also like just so hard. And then there's so much love and then there's so much joy, you know? So it's just so hard. And so yeah, so when her adoption was final, it was like just like amazing. And then we wait, and then 2 months later we had Banks adoption, and it was like everything was like okay, it fell into place. But up until those days, I'm telling you, it was not easy. Like it was like that whole thing was just kind of like a roller coaster every day because it's so out of your control until it's final. You
Hmm. Yeah, I
know.
can't even imagine. And I think you are so wise looking at multiple perspectives throughout it, because that would be really tough to do, you know. I think that would be really hard. So with Ellie, with the private adoption, how long from how long did that take to finalize through the state and to have it be set in stone?
Yeah, so we started the process. They can't sign anything until obviously after those 48 hours of the baby's born, but we started like getting things like ready when we met the birth mom. So I mean, technically we kind of started things in like May of 2020, and then hers wasn't finalized until August of 2021. So it took like, so she was 13 months old, and it took like, I would say at least 15 months. But also too, like, I have been working on other stuff prior. So like, you have to have a home study, and you have to have a home study for each adoption. And then you have to have, so we had to do like 3 separate home studies, and then home studies too, like, they're only valid for like X amount of time. So like for us, it was only about, like in Texas, it's only valid for a year. So if you don't basically like do everything in that time frame, then you have to redo a home study. So or you do like X amount of stuff. Yeah. So that, and then every home study is different, and there's different caseworkers, and then obviously with the state, they go through like all your background, like everything. They're going through like, I mean, they go through all your personal stuff. So like you have to definitely be like really open, especially when you're doing state adoption. I mean, they're like combing through everything. Like they comb through your finances, they comb through like your home. Like they would come in every single month and they go through my whole house. Like they would check if my sinks like had water, like were running. They were checking if the toilets flushed. They were checking if I had like proper like locks on everything, and if I had, like, it's not like they just walk in and like, oh yeah, like you're great, like you're a great person. Like no, they're like going, like they're checking the bedrooms, they're checking different things. Like you can't, there's different things, like you can't have like visitors have to get background checks if they're going to be in the home like more than X amount of times a month. So I mean, it's not like you are like basically a foster home. So, I mean, you have to go through the same checks that everyone else does, even though, like, well, the same checks that anyone that's a foster parent goes through, unless, like, until it kind of hits, like, until the adoption's final. So, yeah, so you still have to go through a bit. So, hers took, I guess, back to everything, hers took 15 months. But if all the documents would have, like, lined up, and if they like didn't come back saying like, okay, we're gonna fight for this baby back, it could have been finalized technically 6 months after she was born. Like 6 months after she was in our like care essentially and living in our home. So I mean, that's that just kind of depends on like when the courts are open. It kind of depends like how the birth parents like want to go about things, and also how the judges, like sometimes the judge like requires different things. And so um, her private adoption, that's how long it took. It took like 15 months essentially from when we met the birth parents. And then Banks's adoption, we met him in December, and it was finalized pretty quick. I mean, it was finalized in November, so 11 months later. But also, the reason it was finalized like fairly quicker than most state adoptions was because they had relinquished his birth parents' rights in like that March. So once those were relinquished, he had moved in that same day, and then we had him for 6 months, and then the 7th month, like we finalized his adoption. So that's the only reason why his was like fairly quick. But I know like with other like foster situations and other state adoptions, like it can be a long process, especially when the family's involved and they have like meetings with the family, because you still have to take your kids, like even if you're fostering, a lot of times you still have to take them for like visitations, you still have to like do all those things. And so until like basically like their rights are relinquished, it is just like a long process until that. And sometimes the birth parents like relinquishes their rights on their own instead of the judge. So I mean, it's so like situational. But yeah, I mean, yeah, and I mean technically his took like, he had been in the system for a year, and then it was additional like 7 months. So I mean, he had basically been like hopping from foster home to foster home until he had ended up in like the foster home that we had met him in. So yeah. Yeah. So
Wow.
yeah.
Uh,
So is kind of like just all different, like every
Yeah.
situation is so different.
That is, and I appreciate you being so vulnerable and sharing some of your feelings as you've been, went through all of that because that is so much. And I think a lot of times too, you know, not having done adoption myself, I have no idea what someone has experienced or gone through to be able to have all of that happen and the stars align and for everything to come together. And so it's really nice to be able to hear that process. And I just really appreciate you sharing all of that.
Of course. I know it really is. When you think of it, you're like, I don't know how these stars aligned, but they just somehow do, like
Yes.
like
Yeah.
they just do. And even like with these babies born in like a decent situation or a bad situation, like somehow they just align perfectly where it's like they were just totally meant to be with you, And it's just crazy. Like there's just no way to say like this was just not meant to be.
For sure, for sure. And just those tender mercies along the way. It's just amazing seeing those miracles and stuff happen. And it's
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
Yes, it is amazing. It is amazing. It's definitely not easy, but it's amazing. And then it's like you look back and you're like, okay, we did.
I know. Do you feel like you can breathe a little bit now? Because
Yeah.
oh, that's a
Yes.
lot.
I still like, I will be honest, like, I still like would have dreams that like my babies were going to get taken away, or I still had dreams like, okay, are they like my baby? But it's like when you go into court, everything's like final when it's final. And it's like they change even the birth certificate. So you get a brand new birth certificate, you get a brand new social security card. Like you get so many different things. And so you kind of like feel like, okay, like, and and then after that, like it's kind of like not in like for that little boy, they give you have to read like a whole redactive file before you even go into adoption. And so they're just so like it's so amazing to read because you read from like even the time that they were like in the hospital, like their birth records, and you read like the different foster homes. So you can kind of like get to know your baby in a way because sometimes you like don't get that if when you go through that process. So yes, you read everything and you have to like go, yes, like I know exactly like basically what I'm like getting myself into um with just like anything. And he was like this little peanut. It was just so cute. But yeah, and so then we kind of like started like a health journey, getting him super healthy and like getting him in the best situation possible. So yeah, so like it's just like every situation is just so different. And now like reading all the history, and so we kind of like you miss out on like a chunk of like his little life. I didn't know anything from his first like 14 months of life. So that was like awesome to like be able to read it and be like, okay, like these are some things he like experienced or went through, or like this is what the they saw when they went to visit him. So that was awesome too, just to like get to know what has your baby gone through, because they go through so much in that little time frame, and they move so much, and like they experience like different things. So it was like awesome just kind of reading. And I know like other kids are in the system for a lot longer, but it was like awesome just to read it. So
Oh,
it
that
was,
is. It's nice that they have that documentation. That's a big deal. It
yes,
does. It's nice to be able
you
to
should.
connect that way.
Yeah.
Oh,
But a lot of people, I would say like a lot of people are afraid of the adoption process, or going and being a foster like parent. And I will say like it's not easy, but like there's you see so many blessings, and it's not that scary once you kind of like get into it. Sometimes you're like the unknown is more scary than actually doing it.
totally, totally. So would that be your advice is for people looking into adoption is just to dive in?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think
just go for it.
dive in because I mean every situation is so different, and I know that like it could
Mhm.
be very costly, especially for the private adoption. But like just literally like dive in and be open to like every and any option, because I just like you just never know where your baby's gonna come from, or you never know like who's going to call you, or, like basically like what happens, like, because you just never really know. So I was just like really open to like anything and everything. So that would be like my advice too, is like, don't be just like so set and like, nope, it has to be this, this, and this. Or my friend had her baby come this way, so like I want my baby to come that way. Like, it's like there's just so many different avenues, and um like you just never know. And then even to like every adoption is so different. Like, even my two kids adoptions are completely different. They were different in the process. And even now, like I still send Ellie's birth mom pictures every like month or every couple months, and then like we don't really chit chat, but like there has been a few times like over the past like basically 3 years where she has reached out, but we've kind of left it out like that. Like, if you want to reach out, but also like I am more private, like with the following on social media, and I am more private on that, but I do share the photos to her. So like, also like you have to know what you're comfortable with, like with for basically the rest of, or like until your child's certain age where it's like, okay, like, yeah. And also too, like we kind of decide on both ends, like what are we comfortable with, and like what are you looking for in an adoptive parent, and this is what I'm looking for in a birth parent. And sometimes it doesn't line up, and sometimes it does. And then with Banks's, since it was like a state adoption, I mean, they seal those documents like sealed shut. And so like I do have some information on his birth family, and I will share it with them obviously like when he's old enough, but I personally just haven't reached out, just like for circumstantial reasons. But I mean, like if there ever becomes a day, like yes, like we are open. Obviously our kids like know they're adopted even though they don't understand yet. So I think that like just be really open to everything, because you just never know.
Totally. I think that is amazing advice because it's really true. There's so many different avenues, and I think a lot of times when we're more open, those opportunities come because you're ready for them, you're waiting for them. And so, yeah, I love that. Haley, so you mentioned a lot of ups and downs during the journey. Was there anything that helped you get through those hard times?
Yeah, I mean, I think like, okay, so like infertility, when we were going through that, I was very like, both me and my husband were very private about it, and I didn't feel like anyone could say anything that like helped during that time.
Hmm.
But like for me, and I even like told my family, like I don't want to hear like, oh, so and so got pregnant after all these years, or so and so like did this, like
Hmm.
or like, have you tried this, or have you tried that? I just wanted to hear like, it's okay. I'm here if you want to talk, and I love you, and like we're praying for you, or everything will like, I know that it's like even people would say like, oh, it's just not your time, or, and I'm like, I didn't like to hear that. I like to hear just like,
Hmm.
if you want to talk, I'm here, and we love you, we're thinking about you, and like, it sucks, like it's okay to
Hmm.
just say it sucks. Like it's okay to be like, yeah, it's not fun to go through any of that, like to go through fertility, or to not, I guess, quote unquote, like have your family just like so easy, or just like naturally like, okay, like we want to get pregnant, we're having a baby, we're adding to our family. So like I
Hmm.
just wanted to hear sometimes like, I'm sorry, like it just sucks. And so that was kind of
Hmm.
like through the fertility, that's what I wanted to hear. And then through the adoption process, I want to just hear like just keep going, because sometimes like we would hear like, it's not final till it's final, and like you never know, like don't get too attached. And so I was like, that doesn't help. Like I want to hear like,
Yeah.
just love the baby, even if it's for like the short, like for a lot of foster situations, the baby will come in, live with you, and then they go to a different situation, or they go back to their birth parents. And so, like,
Hmm.
I always just like to hear, like, love them for either the short time you have the baby, like, you're that baby, and the baby's yours for that short time, or like, just keep going, like, because that's like,
Hmm.
because I didn't like to hear like any negative, because there was already too
Yeah.
much negative that I just wanted to
Mm-hmm.
hear, like, and I didn't even want to hear like, I know for sure this is going to work out. Like, I just wanted to hear like, just keep going. Like, just keep going and like have faith and push through and like do everything on your end, because it's just out of your control. Like, you can't control
Mm-hmm.
anyone else's like thoughts, emotions, feelings, like, you know. So like that's all I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to hear is like you can do it. Like, just keep
Yeah.
pushing through. Like, something will work out, you know. So, but yeah, I mean, there was definitely times where it was like just hard. Like, it was just like, you know, are we gonna get like, are we gonna be able to keep our babies? And are we gonna, like, you know, like after so many
Mm-hmm.
years of stuff, like even the failed adoption was like heart wrenching. Like, just like, what do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, after you've gone through so much, you're like, I really have to go through this another thing, you know? But I'm so
Mm-hmm.
grateful for it, because I wouldn't have been prepared for two babies. Like, I just like, I wouldn't have been prepared. I wouldn't have been prepared for him to move in so quickly. Like, I'm just so grateful for it, even though it's just so hard. And it gave me a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of like more empathy for like just like my
Mm-hmm.
daughter's birth mom, and just like, you know, it's hard. Like, it's hard on
Mm-hmm.
all aspects, and it made me so grateful for her too, that like she was like, that she did that for us, you know. So yeah, so it just is like so many emotions, but you're like, I just want to hear like, just keep on going, you
I
know.
love that. Keep on going. And I think that's amazing advice. And I think that's a good reminder to myself, because I think sometimes, like when we see someone in a moment and we want to be there for them, I think a lot of times we're trying to make it better. And I think in
Yeah,
reality, you are spot on that the best thing we could do is say, keep going. I'll be here for
yeah,
you.
yeah.
What can I do? And just, I think that's the best advice ever. I need to do that more.
Just like acknowledging that it's hard, like just saying like, you know what, like what you're doing is hard, because I think sometimes it's like people just want to tell like other success stories, like, oh, but this person this and this person this, and oh, like, you know. And it's like, it's okay to just say right now it's just hard for you, you know. And that's okay. Like, everyone goes through hard things. It's just like, we just have to figure it all out, right?
For sure, for sure. So, going through all this hard, is there anything you've learned about yourself through these experiences?
Yeah, I mean, just so much, just like that you're just like a lot mentally stronger than you think. I think too, like, you fight so hard for these babies that it just like, you have such a love and appreciation. And two, like, you just like, you love other people like just as much. Like, I have so much love, even though me and like Ellie's birth mom is not super close. I mean, like, if she reached out, we can talk, like everything. But like, I have so much love for her, and I know that she
Hmm.
reciprocates it, because we're connected by this little baby, you know. And like, I love Banks's birth mom, even though I've never met her, even though I've never talked to her. Like, and I love everyone who like went through the journey with us. I love all the like, I love the lawyers and the nurse and just like the foster parents, like everything. Like, it's like you kept my baby just like alive and going, you know. So you have
Hmm.
so much love for people that necessarily you don't even know. So I think
Hmm.
that shows a lot. Is just like, and to like, you have this, I've learned that like meeting my little babies, that you basically like, even like my little boy I knew nothing about, and I met him for the first time and just had this like overwhelming love for him, you know. And then you take care of him as a mom, and you just grow this like connection and bond. And I've never like looked at my kids and ever thought like they're not biologically ours. You know, like, I've always just been like, no, those are my babies. They're always meant to be my babies. And then you just like, so I've learned that, and I've learned to like, I can do hard things, and like me and my husband can do hard things together. And um it's like, just, I don't know, I've learned just like, obviously too, to like rely on God, and to like just have so much faith. And like, even though like at the hardest days, like, you can feel so much love. Like, how is it
Hmm.
possible that this little boy found his way up to us, or like you just like there's no doubt that it wasn't like such a miracle, and there wasn't a plan, and there wasn't like God's hand and just every little detail. Like you just like you see everything and you're just like, oh my gosh, like how is you can't even deny that there it wasn't meant to be, So I just think you
Mhm.
like I've learned a lot about myself just in the sense that like how much I was willing to fight for my family and these babies
Mhm.
and I don't know, just like you kind of have had to kind of like I don't know, you just evolve into just so much love and the miracles, and then you go through a whole other phase of like raising the babies. So you go
Mhm.
through a whole different like challenge of that. But I mean, yeah, I mean, yes, I definitely learned a lot and I would do it again. It's just like, it's just hard. So yeah. So the process, like, it
Oh.
definitely is worth it. So I would do it again. It's just like finding the right timing, going about it to like grow your family.
For sure, for sure. Oh, that's amazing, Haley. You seriously have just been such a light, and I just appreciate you diving in and sharing so many of those just tender mercies and special moments of being able to get your precious children.
Of
And
course.
it's just so, so special. And thank you so much for just being open and sharing everything.
Of course. I know it's like
Oh.
kind of a lot, but yeah, it's good. It's all good stuff.
It is. It is. Well, and I appreciate it because I feel like it really helps bring a realistic perspective to the table, and I think that's a lot of times, sometimes that kind of missing element is, realizing the work that it takes and the effort and a lot of the behind the scenes things that happen. But in the end, it's worth it. It's worth
Yeah.
it.
Oh, it's so worth it. It's so worth it. And it's like all good things are not easy. So it's definitely like
Uh-huh.
very hard. It's definitely very emotional. It's definitely a roller coaster. It's definitely like you fight for those kids, but I mean, it's like so worth it.
Hmm. Totally. It is. It is. And you are just the most amazing mom ever. Like you're so such a sweet mom. Oh. Yes, yes.
Thank
Oh
you.
my gosh, yes.
Every day is gonna be a thing, but
Oh.
each time. But yeah, so it's
Oh.
been fun. It's been fun. It's definitely like I would definitely recommend it to everyone, but you know, it's just yeah.
Totally. Oh, you're so cute, Haley. Is there anything else you want to share or cover?
I'm always open like for people reaching out if they have any questions because I know it can be like kind of a scary route and I know it can be a little like okay like just it's a whole different pivot after you've gone through fertility for so long or even you go through fertility for like a short period of time or even if you don't go through fertility and you're like no I just want to adopt. Like
Mhm.
I know it can be scary and I know everything is like so different so I'm always open like when people have reached out and just asked like okay, like what advice or what do you think? Like I'm always open to like chit chat, even though I'm like definitely not a professional. So like if anyone wants to reach out, like they're definitely welcome. But other than that, like there's not I mean, I could talk about it all day because there's like so many different things. But I mean,
Totally.
I don't think there's really anything else to add. It's kind of just
Oh.
dive in, right?
Haley, you would be an amazing resource to reach out to. So if someone did want to connect with you, what would be a good spot for that? Instagram or
Yeah, I mean, they can reach out
okay.
on Instagram. I mean, even if they message you, they can have like my personal number or email or something. But I'm pretty
Okay.
like open about it, so I'm not like great on social media, but I'll respond.
Oh, thank you so much for offering that. I think that's the most amazing thing because I think in this world and kind of in this realm, the best thing we can do is reach out to someone who's been there and be able to hear their experiences and to just be able to learn from them, and it helps spark our idea on where to run next in our own journeys. And so I just appreciate you being
Yeah,
willing to be able to do that for others. Thank you so much,
of
Haley.
course.
And
Of
thank you so
course.
much for being on the podcast today.
Yes.
Oh, thank you, Haley. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap this up then, and I'll make sure to link Haley's information down below. And Haley, once again, thank you so, so much. You have just been such a light, and I just have really appreciated you being vulnerable and open and sharing your experiences with your family and how that all came about for you. And so I will be forever grateful. Thank you, Haley.
You're welcome.
And thank you to everyone for being here today, too. Thanks so much for hanging out with us here at the Infertility Club. Don't forget, you got this. For more hope, support, and positivity, watch this next video.